So I wanna talk about TERFs. I'm gonna do it one take, no editing, because I'm just filling up time when I'm just fucking going to the store, right? So I'm like, okay, let's talk about some TERF shit, right? Because a lot of people tend to misunderstand like who TERFs are, what they believe in, and what kind of people are TERFs, right? A lot of left-wing people like being like, hey, I hate TERFs because they're easy targets, right? They're transphobic women, right? That means they're not scary like men are. You don't want to actually confront men because men are really fucking scary, right? However, you can confront women and they're transphobic women, so you can go like, oh, look how bad these people are, even though they're like usually way less transphobic than like most actually like hardcore transphobic people are transphobic, right? So you look at these like marginally transphobic women and you go like, oh, they're like fucking bad, they're like the worst, right? I mean, in actuality, they're not that bad, but I'm not saying the TERFs are good, obviously, like I'm a trans person and I know that they aren't good. but the important thing to recognize is that they don't all fall into like one category, right? Because when people talk about TERFs, right, the most common category that they're thinking about is like conservative women who are, by all accounts, like just conservative. They can either be like anti-SJW or like traditionalist or whatever, but they're like truly conservative women who appropriate some feminist talking points because they don't really like the idea of getting like maritally raped, right? And like that's the common picture of a TERF for a lot of people. That's like what most people think that a TERF is, basically. It's like that kind of person. Now there's another category that's tangentially related to that kind of person, which are like fucking fake neoliberal types who go like, oh, okay, now trans people are bad for this reason and that reason, right? I'm not gonna be defending either of those people or explaining them because they're like relatively obvious what they believe in, right? Because like, if you're either conservative or like a neoliberal transphobe, there are only like a few reasons why you would have like the beliefs you have, right? So it's not something where I can really like explain it and be like, okay, this is the reason why they believe in like this type of stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, they're still like, they would be bad people by multiple different like measurements, right? So like them being transphobic isn't surprising, right? They're not even progressives, right? They're just people who like the status quo, and trans people threaten their like specific chosen status quo, right? But okay, also I'm swerving around the street just to avoid people because I don't want to really like pass people and like make a cut, because then I would have to like do some editing and shit. So I'm just swerving. I'm just swerving like I was really drunk or whatever. Anyway, yeah. So that's one type of TERF, right? That's one type of TERF. But then there's a second type of TERF who are genuinely progressive women, right? They're genuinely, by any account, they're progressive women, right? And then, by some weird means, right, somehow they don't like trans people, okay? So you have these people, and then it's like, okay, why did these people not like trans people? It must be because they're transphobes, like those conservative or neoliberal TERFs, right? It must be that they're also transphobes, because these conservative and neoliberal TERFs are just transphobes with like no real basis. So why would these people be different? Why would these people be different? And I'm going to tell you why these people are different. Because they have an actual theoretical basis or a self-experiential basis why they don't like trans people. These people didn't just wake up and go like, I hate trans people now. I'm going to be a progressive in literally every way except I hate trans people. They didn't just wake up like that, right? They don't pretend to be progressive, okay? So let's think for a second, right? What progressive reasons could there be to not like trans people, right? How could someone be a progressive and not like trans people? And now, the first and most obvious kind of reason is you don't care about people in the first world at all. And this is the most like common type of TERF who will like post like actual intelligent stuff online, and you might go like, wow, why is this intelligent person a TERF, right? Because when you look at like the global fucking population, right, trans people are like such a tiny margin compared to third world women, right? You have like 3 billion third world women or something like that who are constantly facing like the worst kinds of oppression imaginable. But then you have like 100 million trans people or whatever who are also facing like the same kind of oppression, right? Okay, so you see this, like, if you only care about the full world, it's completely reasonable to be like, hey, why are these 100 million trans people just like getting like so up in arms when there's still like 3 billion third world women who like have to be fucking like advocated for. So these types of people usually are brown, or they're really like vocal support, like anti-racist people, right? They're usually socialist or communist, or they're like really like left neoliberal. They're not like center left neoliberal. They're just like they're like fucking they're like educated and shit or whatever. But yeah, that's the first kind of TERF, right? And at that scale, it makes sense. I'm not gonna say it's justified to hate and like trans people for advocating for themselves, because there's like this entire other population out there. But this kind of mentality does make some degree of sense. And I'm not gonna say, oh, this doesn't make any sense, because it makes fucking sense, right? If you think about it for a second, it fucking makes sense. But yeah, these kinds of people, how should you approach these people, right? If you see like a conservative TERF, or if you see like a fucking neoliberal TERF, you should be like, hey, you're a fucking piece of shit, fuck off, right? That's a common accepted strategy. But if you see like one of these TERFs, or like basically full these TERFs, right? What you do, you should just be like, okay, I don't care about you because you don't care about them. Like they don't have like any degree of like care for what you have to say. You should just fucking ignore them. They don't matter. They're not gonna like push legislation against trans people because they're not gonna fucking care, right? Okay, so now that we have that established, we have to get to the last category of TERF, right? Now, as the first two categories are related and intermingle a lot, the last two categories are also related and intermingle a lot, right? The last two categories are also in a tight sphere, right? Because the second kind of TERF is either like an old lesbian who is tired of like trans people like being in lesbian spaces because they just like pussy, right? Or a young lesbian who's tired of like trans people online being manipulative because they're lonely, right? So you have these categories are like, also I'm just walking in circles right now because again I don't want to go to a highly populated place because I'm doing this vlog. Oh no, what have I gotten myself into? Anyway, yeah, these types of people, right, these types of people are also completely understandable, right? Because if you were like a lesbian back in like the fucking 80s, right, and you're doing like fucking lesbian activism, and now it turns out, hey, there are a bunch of like dicks, like you've created your like fucking pussy utopia, now you have to like look at dicks again. It's like, oh, this kind of sucks, right? Yeah, because like most lesbians are not attracted to trans people. Some are, most aren't. This is just a fact, and it doesn't fucking matter. People can be attracted to whoever they fucking are attracted to, right? You shouldn't be pressuring people to be attracted to them. Like, obviously, it's not a good idea to just create like this fucking fucking like try to campaign for lesbians to just be like cis lesbians. Like, obviously that doesn't really make any sense. People should be able to self-select like in the way they want to, and there shouldn't be like one consistent standard. Like if you want to create your fucking like pussy utopia, you should be able to, because it's like your right to choose who you surround yourself with, right? But like if you but they shouldn't be like pushing that shit on other people, right? So, but like the other kind of like the younger lesbians, right, who don't have like their fucking like old 80s fantasies of like just creating like a pussy utopia where they can just like fucking see pussy all the time, be like involved with pussy all the time. And these younger type of people, why do they not like trans women? Why do they not like trans women specifically? Because these people never have any problems with trans men, right? You will see this. These people never have any problems with trans men. They will never have problems with like trans women, right? Okay, why is this? Okay, really simple explanation. If you think about this for a second, you will realize that this is true. Trans people online tend to be super fucking manipulative because they're super fucking lonely, right? Lonely people tend to be manipulative because that's like the way they think they can like stop being lonely, right? So if you're like fucking 19-year-old trans woman, right, on Tumblr or whatever, you might be like, really lonely. Oh, here's like a fucking 15-year-old lesbian, right? Let's send her a DM and be like, hey QT, with a Q and a T, not like a spelled out word, right? Because you're just that lonely, right? So like that kind of behavior isn't really cool, guys. That kind of behavior, kind of bad, just teensy weensy bit bad, right? Because like that's not how you should act. And then you can easily see, like, if you're the kind of person who has gotten like those DMs, like that and that type of interaction, you might be like, trans women, they're not the nicest people ever, right? You can be like, oh, these people aren't like the type of people I want to really surround myself by, right? And that's like a completely understandable like line of reasoning in itself too, right? And at that point, what to do? There's a really simple answer. Just be trans and cool, right? If you're trans, right? Just don't fucking be like, hey, do you want to have sex with me? Because at that point, that's not really like a cool idea, right? You shouldn't really be like that. You should just be like, hey, I'm just gonna be like friends with you. And that usually helps. That in most cases just makes these people like fucking, because they aren't actually transphobic. They just don't really like being manipulated by like this type of person I'm talking about, right? So yeah, that's the final kind of TERF. That's the final kind of TERF. And that's like, you shouldn't fucking like you shouldn't fucking be like, oh, TERFs are like the devil. Also, I've gotten myself in a situation where I have to backtrack because I'm just look where I ended up in. Yeah, this is why I don't like mindlessly go in circles, because you just end up in a place like this without ever realizing where you went. But yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. And fucking think why people think things instead of just going like, oh, these people are bad because they don't like thing X that I think is obvious. Because at some points things aren't that obvious.